Welcome everyone to part 2 of my video on this epic water-cooled system that I'm building in the Singularity PC Spectre 2.0 case featuring an AMD 3900X for now and dual RTX 2080 Ti's, these MSI Seahawk EK water-cooled cards. In video number 1 for this build, we did a test fit. I got some feedback from you guys and there's lots of people who are excited to move on to the next phase. But there is one, I think, most important step to any water-cooled build in particular, and that's just making sure that the hardware actually works.
Excellent!
The Lian Li TU150 small form factor case combines portability and power in a stylish and sensible design, featuring a 1mm steel frame with brushed aluminum exterior, full tempered glass side panel window, 10 gigabit per second capable USB-C front panel port, as well as support for mini ITX and mini DTX motherboards. The TU150 is comfortable at home or on the go thanks to the recessed pop-up handle built into the top of the case. It's available in a sleek silver or stealthy black finish, so click the sponsor link in the description to learn more. So guys, when I've done big projects like this in the past, they've sort of had a tendency to get drawn out over a longer period of time, my HTPC. But for this project, at least, I want to move forward, at least at a steady pace. So I'm gonna try to do at least a video a week on this, which means there might be a little bit of in between from time to time. That said, for today, I'm gonna be handling 2 major questions, hopefully getting answers, and those questions deal with the primary hardware. The motherboard is the X570 Godlike from MSI, and then I've got 2 of these RTX 2080 Ti Seahawk EKX Edition pre-water blocked cards that I'm going to be using for my 2-way graphics card solution. Now, if you watch Jay's 2 cents here on YouTube, friend of the channel, he recently had some trouble with his MSI X570 Godlike motherboard. I'll post links to his videos down in the description if you guys want to check him out, but long story short, Jay actually had a really early version of the X570 Godlike, and when he tried to update it with the BIOS that's available on MSI's website, his motherboard stopped working. I have contacted MSI already. They have assured me that the board I have is a retail model and not one of those early samples that were sent to reviewers. I've done a Windows installation on this. I handled that last night, so I have another piece of hardware to add to our parts list. This is just an 960 Pro NVMe SSD, 512 gig from Samsung. Nice, solid NVMe SSD, but I needed an operating system on there, so that's installed in the lowest M.2 slot. I dropped in I think this is just a GTX 1080, just so I had some video outs to get the operating system installed. And what that means is that once I've double checked that the motherboard's gonna work with a BIOS update, and I haven't done the BIOS update yet, I can install these graphics cards, set up an impromptu open loop just to run some liquid through the cards, and test the cards themselves as well. Because another comment that I got when I said I was gonna be using these cards was a couple people who came and told me that they had heard from people who had had issues with them. These have about a 3.8 out of 5-star rating on Amazon, and there's a lot of people who have said they work great for them, but there were a few people who said they had issues with the thermal paste application or artifacting from the cards. So I want to get these up and running and just make sure that we can do some game testing on them and that we're not experiencing any of those problems. Also, I have a 3900X to install now because my other 3900X is currently being used in the Corsair build that I'm also doing, a water-cooled Corsair build. Speaking of that build, the pump and reservoir have not been installed in that build yet, so I'm going to be using the Corsair XD5 RGB just as an external pump and reservoir so I can get a quick loop setup for the GPUs. And then the last thing I'm going to do for today is some planning for next week's video because there's a few more things I need to order. I need to get the radiators in particular, and that will help me with planning out spacing for everything else. And because the cables in this build are going to be very visible, whether you're looking at it from this side or from the back, I think we should go with some special sleeved cabling, and I have a source perhaps for that. So first testing setup, we've got a 750 watt Be Quiet straight power supply connected up to our main motherboard. I'm leaving the 3600X installed in there with the Wraith cooler because it's already installed and good to go. I'm just doing a BIOS update. Got a GTX 1080 installed, so we have video outs. All right, hey, oh wow, look, we're already into Windows. Here we are on the MSI support page. Switching over to BIOS, it looks like our latest version, 7C34V15. It was updated about a month ago in September. I downloaded the BIOS file, I copied it to my external drive, and now I'm going to do the trick where I hold Shift while I click the restart button. Holding Shift while you click restart will let you bring up this screen, and this lets you go into troubleshoots and advanced, and then you can do UEFI firmware settings, and then it will boot straight into the UEFI. Yay! And then you don't have to tap delete while it's rebooting. After rebooting into the UEFI, we're going to go down here to mFlash. It does a quick reboot to enter the mFlash software utility. And now I can choose the file that downloaded. We're updating from version 1 to version 1.5, just in case anyone was wondering. And yes, I will select this file, and now it will update. So Lucky is now taking some ninjas out, as you can see, and thankfully we have an update and the system still seems to work. We're not getting a CPU error or anything like that. I haven't gone too far into it because this is not the final hardware we're using, but I did fire up hardware info 64 and our numbers are generally speaking looking good across the board. So I think at this point we can go ahead and update our CPU and start working on our GPU loop. So we've made a fair amount of progress setting up our testing of the graphics cards here. First off, I have upgraded our power supply. I think this might be the power supply I go with for the actual build because that hadn't 100% been decided on yet. This is a Cooler Master 1300 watt MWE unit, which is 80 plus platinum rated and has enough connectors for each of these GPUs that I need. So I need 4 8-pin connectors and 2 6-pin connectors. Beyond that, we've set up an open loop here. I'm using a bunch of stuff from previous water-cooled builds I've done in the past. So I've got some Alpha Cool fittings here with the tubing that I used from Riptide. I've got some EK tubing that originally came with one of their complete all-in-one units that was open loop, and I eventually salvaged it from that. I do have a brand new radiator, the LC Coolstream SE from EK. Put a couple Noctua A12X25 fans on there for cooling. And then again, as already mentioned, we've got the Corsair XD5 pump reservoir combo there to give us some liquid flowing through this entire thing. I've got them set up in series right now, and I've got this little AC adapter here so I can turn the pump on. So we need to fill the loop, use just the AC power for the pump to cycle through and make sure there's no leaks. Then we can power on the rest of the system and actually do some testing. Immediate leak. This is probably my bad. I have various caps to use with my water cooling stuff. This is not a good cap, so I shouldn't have used it. I have other caps. I'm gonna replace it with a better one. Everything will be fine, I promise. We have power. So guys, I'm happy to say that as of now, we're still going strong with the loop I set up, so no leaks or anything like that. That is good. Also, we have some initial temperatures. It's given us some pretty reasonable temperatures for our GPUs, basically 30, 31, 32 degrees Celsius, which is right about ambient, so we shouldn't expect much more than that because it would be physically impossible. So all that remains to be done is a bit of testing, a bit of stress testing. I've loaded up Unigine Heaven, and I'm going to run that right now. Okay, well, the system just shut down as soon as Unigine started running, so that's not good. So guys, I had to take a step back to process the various phases of grief I went through when realizing that it seems pretty likely that I have some defective hardware here. So I let the system sit. I did come back and try a few troubleshooting methods. For example, I had a daisy-chained power cable, PCI Express graphics power cable, going from one card to the second card. Probably not the best idea, so I got rid of that. Didn't change anything. The closest I've gotten to getting the system to boot back up again is just by unplugging all the power from the graphics cards. And then it booted again, so that's kind of telling me that maybe it's an issue with the cards and maybe not the motherboard. So what I'm going to do, hopefully relatively quickly, is remove this GPU assembly from here, switch back to an air-cooled graphics card just so we can boot up and see if the core system is still working. And then I'm going to test each of these cards individually to see if one of them works and not the other, or vice versa, so that hopefully I can hit up MSI if one of them is defective in some way and get it replaced. So we've switched back to a known working configuration, and in case, I don't think we actually captured it on camera, but what happened with the water-cooled loop when it was set up was it booted into Windows just fine. I was installing Unigine Heaven, and as soon as I loaded up Unigine Heaven and it had a 3D load on the cards, the entire system shut down, and after that point it refused to boot up. So that's what's kind of pointing me towards, I think there might be something wrong with the GPUs. Only new piece of hardware here from that original configuration that I did all the setup with is a power supply. I don't believe there is anything wrong with the power supply, but hopefully for now, we're just gonna get the system back up and running again. And this will help us do some troubleshooting to determine that, yeah, hopefully these core components are okay, and it's actually one of the graphics cards that we can determine is the point of failure. All right, so we're back in the UEFI. Just did a quick double check to make sure everything is being recognized there. Gonna save and exit, restart, make sure we can load into Windows. And I think maybe I'll load up Heaven just for a second with this graphics card to make sure that we're completely functional, even while running a 3D rendered game, to just, again, another little step in the troubleshooting process. So we are successful. Our system in this configuration is working, so that would indicate that's one of the GPUs. Question, which one? Since they are basically identical to each other, I did a little label. So we got card A and card B. Gonna set up the loop with each of those and see if either of them are functional. To hopefully make this a bit easier to switch from one card to the next, I am continuing to use these quick disconnects. That way, hopefully, once I test one of them, I can use the quick disconnects to pop it out and replace it with the other one and move from A to B with relative ease. So now we've given it again some time to run on the separate power without any power going to the motherboard or graphics card or anything to make sure there's no leaks. And now we're ready to give it another go. Again, I think that's a good sign because the system isn't immediately shutting itself off. So that's positive at least. All right, moment of truth for GPU A running Unigine Heaven. So Heaven has been running for a few minutes now. It does seem like the card is functional. Temperatures aren't even that bad either. It's at about 44, 46 degrees. So at this point, let's switch to card B. And I'm almost hoping that it's defective because that would at least let me know that, yeah, that's the problem, but we'll see what happens. Ever since I started using quick disconnects and water cooling, they have come in so handy in so many situations. Case in point, Riptide had a pump fail yesterday, and I was able to quick disconnect because I have 2 loops in that system, connect everything up to the same loop to get the system back up and running. Case in point here again, just with a couple quick disconnects, that made it just a lot easier to swap one GPU for the other, so glad I did that. Time to switch the system back on one more time and determine if this graphics card is functional. Here goes. Well, there's your answer. We have a failed RTX 2080 Ti MSI Seahawk EK edition, which happens from time to time. And I think that is a good spot to end this video, and probably just the best possible, if I want to try to look at silver linings, way to demonstrate the point of this video, which is that if you're going to do a system like this, and you're going to take the time and effort, because there's a lot of extra time and effort that goes into setting up water cooling for something, you absolutely want to make sure that the hardware you're installing is functional, at least at the point when you install it. You can install it and break something along the way, that's totally possible as well. But with a setup like this, with multiple GPUs, really high-end hardware, you just want to have that peace of mind that knowing that stuff is working. The most important part of any water-cooled build is not the water cooling itself, it is testing the parts beforehand. I've learned a lesson today, hopefully you guys have as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I am now going to be doing next steps, which involves getting the sleeved cabling for all of the power wherever it needs to go, getting the rads, getting fans for the radiators, I have some ideas in mind for that, and then figuring out the situation with the fittings and the tubing. So lots more still to be done on this system. I hope you guys don't mind multi-part videos because that's been my intent from the get-go with this. I will have more on it soon. And if you do want a bit more water cooling content right now, check out the Corsair build I'm doing with the Hydro X series because that is midway through as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video though. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in the next one.